I am creating this video to assist you figuring out the answers to the scenarios provided in this worksheet you received previously in class. All of the scenarios presented here deal with non-Mendelian inheritance. And remember that there is a term we use for patterns of inheritance that don't follow exactly the outcomes predicted through Mendel's law of segregation. Among those patterns of non-Mendelian inheritance, we can cite incomplete dominance, multiple alleles, codominance, pleiotropy, and polygenic inheritance. So what I want you to do is this. I want you to find your worksheet, pull it out, and attempt to solve it the best you can before you continue watching this video. So pause this, answer the worksheet, and then you can compare the answers you obtained or you provided to the ones that I'm suggesting here. Let's begin. For scenario number 1, it is only stated that for the A-B blood groups found in humans, there are 3 alleles responsible. They are represented for allele A, antigen A, as a dominant, capital A, for antigen B as a dominant, capital B, and the recessive allele for the absence of these 2 antigens, A or B, is going to be a lowercase I and nothing else. But notice that there's no reference being made here to dominance or recessiveness. It is simply stated that A, B, O blood groups are going to be the result of 3 different alleles. So the best answer you can provide here is going to be letter B, multiple alleles. That's it. On the second scenario, you read about 2 different kinds of horses. The cremello horses, which have this off-white color, and the chestnut horses, which have a brown type of coat. Now here there's an interesting pattern, because if you cross a cremello with a chestnut, the off-white with a brown, the offspring are going to have this yellow, golden yellow type of a color, which is an intermediate to the coat color for both of the parents. And whenever you see an outcome where offspring show an intermediate phenotype to that of the parents, that is an indication you're looking at a case of incomplete dominance. In other words, when this cremello off-white course is crossed with a brown one, the offspring are not off-white. Cremello is not dominant over chestnut. The offspring are not brown either. Chestnut or brown is not dominant over the cremello. Instead, the offspring are this palomino or golden yellow type of color. So that is an indication that the process at work here is the one we indicate as incomplete dominance, and that's the letter A in the list that you have. Okay, for the next one. We are told that one allele, the allele responsible for sickle cell disease, again, I emphasize, one allele alone, is responsible for a variety of phenotypical traits. That is the classic indication you're looking at pleiotropy. In the case of Mendelian inheritance, one allele coded for the production of only one phenotypic trait. But in the case of pleiotropy, one allele can actually produce a lot of different things. On scenario number 3, you can see that the phenotypic effects can lead to pain, fever, damage to the heart, lungs, joints, brain, kidneys, so many phenotypical characteristics that are being affected all by just one allele. Okay, let's go to the next one. Number 4. It says here that in rabbits, there is going to be an allele for full color, which is going to be represented by the capital C. There is going to be also another type of allele for chinchilla as lowercase c prime. There's a little asterisk or mark, at the top of the C. And so there's going to be also a white allele, which is going to be a lowercase c. And in this situation, there's no indication of, again, which is the offspring that are being produced by what kinds of parents. And so because it is simply making reference to the fact that there are 3 different alleles at work in the production of the color on rabbits, we're just going to treat this as a case of multiple alleles and nothing else. No additional details are provided. Okay, let's move to number 5. On number 5, we are told that in addition to the A, B blood groups, there are other antigens that can also be found on the surface of red blood cells. And those antigens include an M antigen, an N antigen as well. And you have people that can inherit the allele for antigen M and the allele for antigen N. And when they have one of each of the 2 alleles, the red blood cells express both antigens, M and N. And their phenotype for this, particular characteristic of red blood cells is going to be M and N. So whenever you have this situation, you have 2 alleles and both are equally expressed, one is not expressed more than the other, this is going to be a case of codominance or shared dominance. Codominance is what we call it typically. So we're going to be using a letter C over here. One thing you have to be careful about here is distinguishing between codominance and incomplete dominance. Notice that in this case, for the antigens M and N, both of those are expressed. But in the case of incomplete dominance, you don't see in the offspring the phenotype of either of the parents. The offspring have the intermediate. So when it's that intermediate that you see, that is going to be explained as incomplete dominance. No one allele is dominant over the other. I'm going to clear all of these drawings, and I'm going to scroll so we can see the remaining scenarios that we have and continue with my annotations. Okay, scenario number 6. Watch this one. I like this one. It says that a red cow is mated with a white bull. So let's just focus on the colors here. The red short-horned cow, and so let's just focus on the red part with a white bull. And it says here that all of the offspring from this cross are roan, and it is explained here what roan is. It says that roan is a phenotype that has a mixture of red and white hairs. Remember what we just talked about? There is red hairs and there's white hairs. Both of the phenotypes are expressed equally in an individual. The offspring are not pink cows, as it is the case of incomplete dominance in snapdragons when you crossed a red snapdragon plant and a white snapdragon plant, and the flowers were pink because that was incomplete dominance. That's not the case here. The offspring are roan, meaning that if you examine the hair, you'll find it in equal proportions red hairs and white hairs, because both phenotypes are equally expressed. This is also going to be a case of codominance. I'm going to put the letter C over here. Let's continue. Number 7. It says here that there are independent genes and that are lone. This here tells me what the answer is going to be almost. Independent genes, many genes, more than one, at 4 different loci. Okay, 4 different genes at different loci are responsible for determining the type of tissue that determines if an organ transplant is going to be accepted or rejected, and certain other diseases. And that's all we need to know. If we have more than one gene with more than 2 alleles, that's usually the case, then that is a case of polygenic inheritance. I'm pausing again for a moment. Why is this polygenic inheritance? Poly means many, genic means genes. So if we have at least 4 genes responsible for producing one phenotypic trait, that's polygenic inheritance. So we're going to be using the letter for polygenic inheritance was a capital E, according to the list of items we had at the top of this page. All right, let's go to number 8. It says here that a recessive allele causes human genetic disorder called phenylketonuria. One allele, keep track of the numbers, just a recessive allele, just one. And look at all that it does. If a person is homozygous recessive, they are unable to break down amino acid, phenylalanine. Consequently, they have high levels of phenylalanine in the urine. They have reduced skin pigmentation, lighter hair than their normal brothers and sisters. That's at least 3 characteristics now. And some have some type of mental impairment. That's 4 characteristics. Do you know what this is now? 1 gene and many phenotypical traits. That's the signature of pleiotropy. And we have that as a letter D before. We're going to number 9. When graphed, the number of individuals of various heights forms a bell-shaped curve. This bell-shaped curve as a distribution of phenotypes is exactly what you see with continuous characteristics. Like height, skin color also shows a bell-shaped curve. And I think I can switch here to this other illustration we have seen before for skin colors, and you can see here this bell-shaped curve. Most people, on Earth, on average, are going to have kind of like an intermediate coloration, and that is what you expect to see when polygenic inheritance is at work. Now I need to clear my scribbles. So let's go once again to marking. When you see this bell-shaped curve as a frequency distribution for the phenotypes of a population, that is going to be, again, polygenic inheritance. And for the last example, chickens homozygous for the black allele are black, and those homozygous for the white allele are white. So what does it say here? It happens if you cross a black chicken with a white chicken. In some cases, you end up with chickens that are not black, they are not white. Unlike either of the parents, they have gray feathers. And so these gray feathers, when you think about the color, what's gray? Well, gray is an intermediate between black and white. Oh, do you remember that one now? When you see a phenotype for the offspring, which is an intermediate to the phenotypes of both of the parents in the P generation, gray in between black and white, that is an example of incomplete dominance. And for the last time, I try to make an A there, by the way. Number 10, A, incomplete dominance. For the last time, remember, how can you tell this, is incomplete dominance? Reason it this way. Just ask yourself the question. Is black dominant in this case? No. If that was the case, the chickens will be black, not gray. Well, let's look at white. Is white dominant? No. If white was dominant, then the chickens will have white feathers. But the chickens have gray feathers, which is the intermediate between black and white. And so neither of the original phenotypes are going to be seen in the offspring. The offspring show an intermediate phenotype, and that is what happens with incomplete dominance. I hope this helps you review and understand more about these patterns of non-Mendelian inheritance.